How are you guys doing? Today is February 23rd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual profile on Jamal Murray, the starting point guard for the Denver Nuggets, who has yet to make an All-Star game, but I believe has had enough impact in the game, and I think has shown enough, at least in this most recent playoff series, to establish himself as one of the elite point guards in the NBA. Because it is rare. There are very few people in NBA history that have done what he's done, despite the fact that he's never been named to an All-Star game. And just because he's just starting to enter that part of his career, I think he's a player that's worth looking into. And of course, with his career just being started today, he turns 24. And my intent with these profiles is to kind of build on him year after year, as I let his accolades and his accomplishments speak for themselves as to why I believe he's an elite player. But I'm just going to go a little bit into his background and show everything that he's done up until now to let his numbers explain for themselves why he's an elite young player. So if you're unaware with him, he stands about 6'3". He's kind of stocky. He is an amazing shooter. He's very confident in his abilities. And he can he'll pull up and shoot on about anybody. And I think that confidence is kind of what sets him apart from a lot of other players his age. And the fact that a lot of times he's had to step up in really big moments, and the fact that he has, and he's definitely exceeded expectations. I just think that he is a player that goes overlooked. And I think we're about to enter a part in his career where no one's going to overlook him for much longer. So just given a little background, he's from Kitchener, Ontario. That's originally where he's from. And starting out, he eventually played with Thon Maker and his brother. And following his high school campaign, he would eventually get recruited to play at Kentucky under Calipari. And at Calipari, if he would play in the 2015-16 season, he would go on to play. He would start 36 games in a season where Kentucky would end up losing in the round of 32. They finished a pretty good record. I think they finished second total in the SEC. But of course, Jamal Murray was kind of doing his own thing. At Kentucky, he would go on to average 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and just about a steal per game, shooting 45% from the field, 40.8% from 3, and 78% from the line. So, of course, with amazing shooting numbers like that, he earned his nickname. And, of course, with the celebration, he named himself the Blue Arrow because he never misses. And after his college campaign, he had established himself as a good enough prospect at Kentucky to be taken with the 7th overall pick in the 2016 NBA draft by the Denver Nuggets. And of course, this was following a season where, of course, he was the SEC All-Freshman, of course, first team All-SEC, third team All-American. So naturally, it made sense that he was taken in the lottery. And in his first season with Denver, which of course would be his age 19 season in 2016-17, he started 10 games, but he played all 82 in a season where the Denver Nuggets would finish with the 9th best record in the Western Conference, as they only won 40 games that season, as they were just outside of a playoff playoff spot in the West. But of course, in the season, Jamal Murray would average about 21 minutes a game. He averaged 9.9 points, almost double digits, 2.6 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.3 blocks, all while shooting 40% from the field, 33% from 3, and 88.3% from the free throw line. So it's like he was making a lot of the shots that he was taking, but of course not many opportunities. And of course it makes sense because he was playing on a very good and a very established young Nuggets team. So of course his objective was to, of course, earn a starting spot, and he did. By the start of the 2017-18 season, he was already named to the second team All-Rookie. And that was the last accolade that would ever kind of get attached to him that the NBA would ever give to him. But ever since, he's been able to kind of grow his game in a way that has benefited the Nuggets and made them a much better team. In his second season in the NBA, in 2017-2018, his age 20 season, he would go on to start 80 of the 81 games in a season where the Denver Nuggets would finish with the 9th best record in the West again. But the difference between this season and the previous season is that this season they had won 6 more games, and the West had, of course, gotten a lot stronger. And, of course, within this season, Jamal Murray would up his minutes per game average to 31.7. So, of course, by playing 10 more minutes a game, he was able to up his scoring average to 9.9 to 16.7 points per game. He upped his total rebound numbers from 2.6 to 3.7, averaging at least one more rebound a game. He averaged at least one more assist a game, as his assist numbers went up from 2.1 to 3.4. He went from averaging 0.6 steals to averaging 1 steal a game, and of course his blocks remained about the same at 0.3. And of course, while shooting more shots, he would go on to shoot 45.1% from the field, which was a big increase from the previous year. It is a very good percentage for a point guard. He went on to up his three-point shooting percentage from 33.4 to 37.8, which is the highest he's had in a full season. The only season he's had higher is the current one. And he went on to shoot 90.5% from the free throw line. That is the highest percentage he's ever shot from the free throw line. Of course, he wouldn't be named to an All-Star game or anything, but the fact that he already established himself as a full-time starter by the end of 2018, it should speak a lot to how good he is. And of course, by the end of 2018, this dude was already 21, and he was a first-year starter on the Denver Nuggets. After that, in his third season with the Denver Nuggets, he would start 74 of the 75 games in a season where the Denver Nuggets would go 54-28. They had the second best record in the entire West. And they would go on to win 8 more games than they did the previous season. So, of course, they were doing incredibly well. And in this season, and in his third season in the league, his second season as a full-time starter for the Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray would average 32.6 minutes per game, which is about almost a full minute than he did the previous year, almost a minute more. He would go on to up his scoring average from 16.7 to 18.2. He upped his rebounding numbers from 3.7 to 4.2. He upped his assist average from 3.4 to 4.8. His steal numbers dropped from 1 to 0.9, which is roughly the same, and his blocks went slightly up. They went a tick up from 0.3 to 0.4. And while shooting 2.5 more shots per game than he did the previous season, his field goal percentage would drop from 45.1 to 43.7, which is still incredibly high for a point guard. His three-point numbers dropped from 37.8 to 36.7, and his free throw numbers dropped from 84.8 to 90.5, as of course he was relied upon more to score more points, and his game was more volume scoring based rather than seizing the opportunities, which kind of led to his scoring numbers drop, but his all-around average numbers going up. And in his first season going to the playoffs, the Denver Nuggets would end up beating the Spurs in 7, and then they would end up losing in the conference semifinals to the Trailblazers. And this was the season that the Trailblazers lost to the Warriors, and the Warriors lost to the Toronto Raptors in the NBA Finals. So that's what was going on. But of course, by then, in his second full season as a starter, he was able to lead the Denver Nuggets to the playoffs. It should speak a lot into what his impact is with this team. So this would transition into his last full season with the Denver Nuggets, which is why I think he goes, which is the season that I believe he entered himself into the elite category. In his age 22 season, his fourth season in the league, and his third season as a full-time starter for the Denver Nuggets, he would start all 59 games that he would play in a season where the Denver Nuggets would go 46-27. This was the shortened season due to COVID. They would have as many wins as they did the season that they just missed the playoffs, except they had 9 more losses. And of course, second year in the league, they were a top 3 team yet again. Of course, Nikola Jokic was a big help to that, but Jamal Murray in this season, he would average about the same amount of minutes. He would average 32.3. His scoring numbers, or his scoring average, would go up a tick as they increased from 18.2 to 18.5. His rebounds would drop from 4.2 to 4. His assist numbers would kind of stay at about a level 4.8. His steal numbers went up from 0.9 to 1.1. His block numbers went down from 0.4 to 0.3. And still at the same time, while averaging about 15 shots per game, he would shoot 45.6% from the field, which is the highest percentage he'd shot in his career at that point. His three-point percentage dropped down from 36.7 to 34.6, and his free throw numbers shot back up from 84.8 to 88.1, as of course, this is the first time you start to see him shooting with volume, and his percentages would start to look like what they did his second year in the league. He wouldn't be named to an all-star team, but of course his impact would be felt in the playoffs, which is where which is where I believe he earned his way onto this list. In the very first series, they would face off against the Utah Jazz, and versus Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray would have one of the best playoff series that he'd have. In his first game, he would put up 36 points and 9 assists, scoring 20 points in the fourth quarter. In game 4, he would score 50 points for the first time in his career in a playoff game, even though they lost. He and Donovan Mitchell scoring at least 50 points. That'll be the first time in NBA playoff history that two opponents scored 50 points against each other in the same game. And then by the end of game 4, the Nuggets were trailing 3-1. And then Jamal Murray in game 5 would put up 42, 8, and 8 to help the Nuggets win game 5. In game 6, he would score 50 points again. So 50 points in the same series to tie it up at 3. And then in game 7, in game 7, he would eventually help the Denver Nuggets advance past the Utah Jazz to help them come back from being down 3-1 in a series to where they would face off against the second best team in the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Clippers. And then against the Los Angeles Clippers, they were down 3-1. And then in game 7, he would end up scoring 40 points in the elimination game against the Clippers to advance them into the Western Conference Finals versus the Los Angeles Lakers. And of course, the Denver Nuggets would be the first team in NBA history to come back from multiple 3-1 deficits in the same postseason. But of course, after being down 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, in an attempt to try to come back for a third time, the Lakers would just win Game 5 outright, and then the Lakers would advance to the NBA Finals. They would eventually win against the Miami Heat, picking up their 17th title. But of course, the Denver Nuggets were right there. They were the team that the Lakers had to go through to get to the finals, and Jamal Murray was arguably the biggest reason, but it was between him and Jokic. It was a 1-2 game between him and arguably the best center in all of basketball. But the fact that a player that wasn't even named to an all-star game was able to put up so many 40-point, 50-point performances in the same postseason, I think that speaks into his ability to kind of step up in big moments, and I think that's what makes an elite player more so than putting up a crazy amount of stats. The fact that he was able to step up in those games and put up that production and help the Nuggets win a series that two series that at one point looked unwinnable. The fact that he was able to do so is remarkable, and I think that was the series. That was the point in his career in which he ascended into elite territory. So this transitions us into his current season. In his age 23, or right now he's turning 24 season, he's started all 28 of the games he's played so far, and right now the Denver Nuggets are sitting in the playoff picture in the West. They are sitting 7th total, as they are a game and a half behind the 6th place San Antonio Spurs. They are half a game ahead of the 8th place Warriors, so they're kind of sitting comfortably within the playoff race, but not too comfortably. And at the same time, they are trailing the first place Utah Jazz within their own division by 8.5 games, the very team that they beat in the playoffs the year prior. And even looking at what Jamal Murray is doing this season in the 28 games, he's averaging 35 minutes, which is the most minutes he's ever averaged in a season by about 2.5. He's averaging 20.9 points, the first time he's ever averaged 20 points per game in a season. He's currently 29th in the NBA in scoring. He's also averaging 4.4 rebounds, which is the highest rebound as average he's had in his career yet. He's averaging 4.4 assists, which isn't quite as much as he did the previous 2 seasons, but is roughly around the same amount. He's averaging 1.2 steals, 0.3 blocks as well. He's shooting 16 shots per game this season, shooting 47.7% from the field, which as of now is the highest field goal percentage he's currently recording in his career. His three-point percentage is at 38.3, which is the highest he's ever put up in his career as well. And is from the free throw line, he's shooting 81.1, which is the lowest he's ever put up in his career. But putting it all together, Jamal Murray, as of right now, is 24 years old. He's entering the prime of his career, and I think he entered it during the playoffs last year. But as of now, there's no more excuses for Jamal Murray to not put up elite performances after and after the entire NBA saw him drop 40 and 50 points against playoff teams, one of them being the Clippers, a team that many thought were going to win the championship last year. And with that said, I mean, I think the numbers should speak for themselves, and the fact that Jamal Murray is getting exponentially better every season should speak to his level of impact on this team. And I think going forward, especially for 2021, I'm going to keep my eye on him. And this is why I believe that for the 2021 calendar year, that Jamal Murray is an elite basketball player. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 15 minutes of this piece. Once again, today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. And with that said, happy 24th birthday to Jamal Murray. Of course, he's continuing to get a lot better. And if you get a chance, check out the blue arrow. He's currently wearing number 27 with the Denver Nuggets. And with that said, I hope all is well. I want to thank everyone for listening to my piece. I'm going to do my next pieces tomorrow once today's exhibitions are finished. And my next individual profile will be on Gianluigi Donnarumma, the elite 21-year-old goalkeeper who currently plays for AC Milan, who's literally on his pace to have one of the greatest careers that an Italian goalie's ever had. But with that said, once again, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.